Good morning. My name is Donnis Crane. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I want to tell you a story about my brother, Tommy. He was my friend. He was my pal. We had a lot of fun together. But please stay tuned until the end. I have a special treat for you. I'm reading the chapter out of my book, June Bugs and Summer Nights, and it contains the story that I'm about to tell you today. Tommy and I were buddies our whole life. We were born into a family of 6 kids. Our older sister, Phyllis, is 17 months older than I am. And then I was 17 months older than Tommy. And then came Lonetta, 17 months after Tommy. And then we waited 5 years for Marla and another 5 years until Rusty was born. So we ended up being a family of 6. But the first 4 of us were so close in age. We became friends and played together when we were little. But Tommy and I were special buddies. I always wanted to be involved in whatever he was doing, and then he followed me around if I was doing something interesting. Living in the small town of Cheney, there wasn't a whole lot of entertainment for us except school events and then church events. Tommy did play a little softball when he was a kid, and Daddy coached him. So we all went down to the ball field and watched as they played. Tommy was little, though, and didn't get to play very often. And Phyllis and I often found ourselves under the bleachers playing with other kids rather than watching Tommy sit on the bench. One of the fun things we used to do when we were real little is we'd go get Mama's broom out of the kitchen, and one of us would sit on our butt on the bristles of that broom. And the rest of us then would grab a hold of the handle and pull just as hard as we could and as fast as we could around the yard. Round and round and round we'd go, swerving and swaying, trying to dump the kid on the broom off the broom. Once the kid fell off, that kid had to take his turn pulling the broom while one of the rest of us sat down on the bristles and held on tight. Now, Tommy always wanted to be the rider, but he never wanted to pull anyone else on the broom. And we got in some heated arguments about him pulling us on the broom. And it would often end up us running into the house and screaming at Mama, "Tommy won't pull on the broom. You make him pull on the broom." But Mama usually said, "Go back outside and settle your own battles." So we go back outside. Phyllis and I finally ended up just pulling each other around on the broom, and when Tommy came around, we just shoved him out of the way. Finally, he agreed to be a puller, and so he got to ride again. But we would play for hours just pulling each other around the yard on the bristles of a broom. One day while we were in the yard, I spotted a little plant that Daddy called Sheepshire. It's just a green little plant, and the leaves are shaped like 4-leaf clovers, only they have 3 leaves on them, and they had little yellow flowers on them. Daddy had shown me this plant before, and I knew that you could eat the plant right out of the yard, but it was very sour and almost bitter to the taste. I also knew that Tommy had never tasted Sheepshire, so I wanted to show him. I said, "Come here, Tommy, look, I eat weeds." Well, he came over, and I pulled a handful of Sheepshire out of the ground, and I stuck it in my mouth, and I started to chew. I said, and he was watching me. And I swallowed. I grabbed another bunch of Sheepshire and stuffed it in my mouth and chewed and smiled and, this is good. And Tommy just kept watching me. Finally, he said, "Let me have some." Tommy was about 3, maybe. I said, "Okay." So I dug some more of that plant out of the ground and I handed it to him. And he stuffed it in his mouth. And I watched, knowing what was going to happen. I just watched him. Finally, it got to him, and he began to spit and cough. He dug in his mouth with his fingers, trying to get that plant out of his mouth, spitting and coughing, coughing and spitting. Finally, he ran over to the sprinkler that was on, grabbed it, and took a big drink from that sprinkler in his mouth and gulp. Then he took another big gulp and spit that out. When he finally got it all out of his mouth, he came after me, running. "Dod damn it, Donnis, Dod damn it, Donnis." Now, normally, we were not allowed to cuss, and normally we didn't. But on this particular event, Tommy was mad. He was running after me and screaming at the top of his lungs, "I'm going to get you, Dod damn it, I'm going to get you." I took off running, and because I was bigger, I outran him. But eventually he caught up to me and grabbed hold of my shirt tail and dragged me down to the ground. And then he sat on me and began pounding me with his little fist. Now, frankly, it didn't hurt too hard because he was little, and it just didn't hurt too hard from those little fists. But Phyllis ran into the house and said, "Mama, Donnis and Tommy are fighting, come quick." So Mama ran out of the house and saw Tommy sitting on top of me and wailing away with those little arms. And Mama came over and grabbed Tommy and made him stand up. Then she grabbed me and made me stand up, and she turned to Tommy. "What in the Sam Hill is going on here?" Mama said. Tommy tried to explain. "She made me eat something. It was awful." But he wasn't getting clear through Mama. So all 3 of us started talking to Mama and trying to explain all at once. And she looked at Phyllis, and then she looked at me, and then she looked at Tommy. And then she looked back at Phyllis, and then she looked at me and looked at Tommy. And I think she was getting more and more confused as time went by. Finally, not knowing what to do and not knowing what really was happening, Mama took the traditional way out and grabbed Tommy by the shoulders and said, "You do not hit girls. You're a boy. You do not hit girls." Well, I was standing there just happy as could be. Here I'd started a ruckus and Tommy was getting in trouble. But when Mama started to spank him or whip him on his butt, I couldn't take it. I was too guilty. So I stopped her and I said, "Mama, it is my fault. I made him eat that sour weed and he wasn't expecting the taste and it made him mad. And then I made him mad by laughing at him." Mama was really too mad to listen, and so she whipped Tommy anyway. Well, I kind of feel sad. I kind of feel sorry about that, but that's what happened. Then she turned to me and she said, "Donnis Erlene, you better quit teasing your little brother. One of these days he's going to be bigger than you, and you'll be sorry." But Mama was wrong. When Tommy outgrew me, about 12 years old, he became a protective big brother and watched out for me the rest of his life. In fact, he watched out for all of his sisters. He was a good big brother. Tommy passed away on September the 18th, 2019, and we miss him every day. If you'd like to read this story, I have published a book called June Bugs and Summer's Nights, and it's chapter 13 entitled, "Dod damn it, Donnis." In the meantime, don't forget and subscribe. You'll be notified when I post other things on my channel. If you'd like to hear the chapter 13 out of my book, here it is. Enjoy.